So I just finished one of my favorite Instagram lives with Betsy, and now I'm about to track for an upcoming Today Show package. Hey there guys, Morgan Radford here, correspondent for NBC News, and today we have a very special guest, an accomplished journalist who is joining us live from China. So we are keeping him way past his bedtime there in Beijing. But this is a person who is near and dear to my heart, and I invited them today as part of this series to talk about people who are doing really well helping their communities amidst this pandemic, because I think we have a lot from him. Because he's in China, he's been in the heart of this crisis a lot longer than we have here in the US. So I want to get a sense of what we can expect here in the US from our counterparts who are living in China. Mr. Betz, this is Jonathan Betz. Say hi to everyone.
Hey, Morgan. Hey, everyone. It's good to be here. So excited.
Yeah. Thanks so much for making the time. I know you just finished your show. So Jonathan is an anchor in China, but he's reported some of the biggest crises here in the United States. He was one of the first reporters to go live out of Hurricane Katrina. He's worked in Dallas, in New Orleans, and he was an anchor at Al Jazeera. And now he's, of course, as we mentioned, in China. But Jonathan, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, and I thought you'd be such a perfect guest for this series, is to kind of give us a sense of what we can expect. What is the status right now where you are in Beijing? How are things looking in China?
Yeah, a lot of good news in China. So things are definitely a lot better than they were before. Remember, I mean, Morgan, you and I know this because we've been talking about this forever. We've been dealing with this since January. And so right now in Beijing, things are reopening. The virus is pretty much under control in China, but things are very far from normal. Gyms are still closed. Movie theaters are still closed for the most part. Most bars are still closed here in Beijing. A lot of restaurants are still closed. There are social distancing rules that police are enforcing. We have to wear a mask. Every time we step outside, the mask goes on. Temperature checks everywhere. And I cannot travel freely outside Beijing. We can roam within Beijing, and in most big Chinese cities, you can roam inside those cities. But traveling within China, and certainly traveling outside China, almost impossible now still because of these restrictions.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you about too, you know, being an American living there, just beyond the normal restrictions that most people have, I've been reading more, and it sounds like there are also additional restrictions that are almost discretionary applied to Americans. Is that true?
I mean, applied to Americans specifically, no. The rules are the same for everyone here, no matter whether you're a foreign national or a Chinese person. But the exception is, which I think is what you're talking about, when it comes to foreign nationals.
Yes.
So China basically closed its border a couple of days ago, saying no more foreign nationals that can fly or come into China, only Chinese citizens, which is frankly a move we've seen all over the world. A lot of countries are doing that. China was one of the last to adopt those measures.
So explain something else to me. I mean, what should we as Americans here expect as we try to flatten the curve, as we hope we are approaching the peak of this thing? Should we expect this to last much longer? How was your experience there?
Yeah, my advice to everyone back home is be prepared that this is going to take a lot longer than you expect. Wuhan just reopened after 76 days. 76 days. And it's not fully reopened at this point. Beijing is not fully reopened back to normal. It took me a long time to come to grips with that. I kept assuming and thinking that I'd wake up one morning and everything would be back to normal. The restrictions would lift, businesses would reopen, and I would have my old life back. That's not the reality. And I don't know if that's going to be the reality, frankly, for a long time here. So be prepared for the long haul, folks. I hate to say it, but that's kind of what we're facing here.
And give me a sense of what you're facing there. I mean, I know when we've talked, you've talked about people coming to your door to check your temperature, people making sure, monitoring your comings and goings. I mean, you had a pretty strict quarantine that you had to adhere to, correct? What was the worst about it?
Yeah, so I was put in quarantine for 2 solid weeks in my apartment, which was pretty much enforced. I could only...
building.
Yeah, I mean, no, the apartment itself, the apartment. I could go to the gate. I could go to the gate to get food. But for the most part, I could not leave the apartment. And that's pretty standard across China, most people, if they've traveled at all, are put into quarantine. Those rules remain in effect today. Whenever I come into my apartment building, there is someone out there taking my temperature to make sure I don't have a fever. Whenever I go to work, whenever I go to a restaurant, temperatures are taken. I have to show a card now to the guards outside my complex that proves that I actually went through quarantine. I'm healthy. I'm fine. I've not left Beijing. There are apps we have to download on our cell phones that basically track our movement to show that we have not left the quarantine zone, have not left Beijing. Yeah, I mean, these are very, very serious restrictions. China is taking this seriously and really wants to bring that number down to 0.
I mean, and I have to ask, for a lot of us here, we have stay-at-home orders, so we can still technically leave our apartments. We could go maybe for a walk, but yours were so much more restrictive. We're kind of going stir crazy in this quarantine. I saw you on Dr. Phil, and you said you got so bored one day you started cleaning your light bulbs. How are you kind of staying sane in the middle of all this?
Yeah, I mean, so I felt pretty prepared for the virus, but I will admit I was completely unprepared for all of the disruptions, for the lockdowns, for the boredom, for the isolation. I mean, these are real issues. These are real issues that I think a lot of people have to face. For me, that meant I had to feel productive, okay, even if I wasn't actually productive. An example, like you just mentioned, Morgan, I was running out of things to do when I was home because I'm now home a lot more often. So I cleaned all of the light bulbs in my apartment. It was not productive. It was not necessary, but it felt productive. And so that felt good. And I realized that was kind of critical because, you know, we're all finding ourselves at home a lot more often. And with that, for me, that brought a lot of guilt that I was not taking advantage of this extra free time because I was not writing, you know, the next great American novel. And so I had to figure out ways to cope with that, and to realize that this is frankly a traumatic experience. I mean, this virus is pretty much touching everyone in the world. For me and for a lot of people, I know this virus dictates where I go, who I see, what I do, sometimes even what I eat. I mean, this is traumatic. This is difficult. And I'm one of the lucky ones because I never actually got sick. So I think I certainly need to be aware that this is definitely something that affects your mental health, and I had to come up with ways to cope with that.
Jonathan, I have to say, your videos coming out of China, I think, are some of the best intimate portrayals of people dealing with this virus and what the ramifications are. So anyone, I suggest that you follow Jonathan's work. He is on Instagram, Jonathan Betz, J.E. Betz. He's on Twitter, J.E. Betz. And he is an exquisite journalist, but he's also a really good person. So I hope that you get to go to his page and check out some of his work as he's been documenting this thing. And I think all of us here around the world could learn a lot from our counterparts who have been dealing with this pandemic a lot longer. Jonathan, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, as always, and your wisdom.
My pleasure. Thank you, Morgan.
Brother.
Bye.
Hey guys, I hope you are all staying safe and healthy during those stay-at-home orders and in this quarantine. We are about to go live in just a minute with someone who you all probably know and love from my personal Instagram page. We met when we were colleagues together back at Al Jazeera, and you know, when you're in the trenches together, you build a different type of bond, and he is one of also has a lot to teach us because he's been in the heart of the coronavirus pandemic, in China. And we can learn a lot from our Chinese counterparts in terms of how they've dealt with it. Betsy, can you hear me?
Hey, Morgan, I hear ya.
Great, sorry. And for everyone out there, this is Jonathan Betz. I do refer to him as Betsy. Jonathan is an accomplished journalist. He has been in New Orleans, he's been in Dallas, he's reported from just some of the biggest disasters like Hurricane Katrina. He was one of the first reporters to go live from there. And now he is working in China as an anchor. And you've been there not, only dealing with the protests just a few months back, but now you've been dealing with this pandemic. And I know it's something that we've talked about personally, over FaceTime and things like that. But I think this is just a really important opportunity for us to take, for you to teach us some things. So what do you say we go over to NBC's page and do the real deal? Yeah,
sounds great. Can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Let's go yonder. Let's go to the bigger platform, shall we?
Bye.
I'll see you in a minute. Hey guys, Mo Red here. The conversation was too good, so I decided to continue it on this page, something I've never done before. But as you know, Jonathan is an exceptional journalist, and I thought that it would actually be good if we had this conversation here on my page, because the reality of it is I call Jonathan several times a week. He's my best friend in the world, and I've called him super concerned about what things will look like in the US. And I look to him as kind of this guru to let me know timeline. Betsy, I was just telling people here that the conversation was so good, we decided just, what the heck. We'll share what.
Yeah, we got more to say. We got more to talk about here, folks.
Say,
we're not done.
Why not have this little kiki session, go public? What's wrong with that? It's going to be a kiki education session. Betsy.
Kiki on Instagram.
I was telling people the reality of it is I call you like every other day, and I use you as like this litmus test for what we can expect here in the US. And I've called you in tears because it's hard. Like, I mean, what you were dealing with in the quarantine, frankly, like months ago, I started dealing with on a delayed timeline, and it is super, it's stressful. Like it is this time.
It's stressful.
It's trying.
Yeah, it's stressful. I mean, like, and people have to acknowledge that, like, this just stinks. This virus stinks. It's killing people. It's hurting people. It's causing job losses. It's affecting every part of your life. As I was saying earlier, like, that's something that I had to really, like, wrap my hands around, is the trauma of this experience. Because this is traumatic, what we are all going through. It has touched every corner of the world. It's touched every part of my life. And, that's difficult. This is a really tough experience for a lot of people. It's scary.
I mean, and I can't help but think about, and by the way, for any of you, I see some of you, were you nervous? Oh wait, there were some questions coming for you, Betsy. Were you,
okay.
Gay Rich 19, were you nervous to go outside the first time they lifted the restrictions? That's a great question.
That is a good question. And you know what? I was not nervous, and I don't have a good reason why, because I know a lot of people are. A lot of people are scared to go outside. I wasn't nervous because, how do I answer that question? I wasn't nervous because I wasn't really nervous about the virus, because I wash my hands, I practice the good hygiene, I practice the social distancing, I take it seriously, and we all have to wear a mask in China, no matter where we go. So I've always got this thing on me. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this virus, and there's a lot of unfounded fear. And because I really educated myself on this virus, how, what we know about it, how contagious was it, the symptoms, I felt really empowered. And so when I did venture out for the first time, it was a really great experience. It was a great moment, and I wasn't too scared.
Another question here: are you still sheltered in place?
No. So I was actually in a quarantine, which is a little different than some of the lockdowns we're seeing in the US, which meant I could not leave the apartment for 2 weeks, like at home, enforced quarantine.
Betsy, I need you to pause there. I need you to really, truly, like, give them the real tea. Tell them about what it was really like when you were in that apartment. I mean, you were telling about cops coming to your, like, door, making sure, like, checking your temperature twice a day.
Yeah. I mean, like, so that's the thing is, like, because we hear these terms like lockdown, quarantine, shelter in place, and stuff like that, and they all mean different things. And here in China, to give you an example of what the Chinese government decided was necessary to stop this virus, pretty much everybody, at least anyone who had left the city, had to go into a quarantine, which was enforced, which meant I had to stay in my apartment for 14 days and could not leave the apartment except to go to the front gate to get food. Now, today, that is not even possible. The quarantine is actually stricter. Today, they would put me in a center and would not let me open the door except to get food from the front door. Okay, so the rules keep on changing, and frankly, the restrictions keep on tightening. So for me, that meant I could not leave my apartment. It was enforced. The police came to my apartment to make sure that I was cooperating. I had to submit my temperature. I had to take my temperature myself, submit it twice a day to my boss, to my community manager, to different authorities. I mean, it's a whole process. And that is something that is happening and was happening across China. And then we had the lockdowns, we had the restrictions. But today, now that I got past that, today I can wander around freely in Beijing. If you look at Beijing, if you were in Beijing right now, it would seem pretty normal. There's traffic on the streets. People are going to parks. A lot of businesses are open, but not all. There are definitely still restrictions in place when it comes to traveling and when it comes to any kind of business that draws crowds.
Betsy, I have to say, I'm sure everyone watching this has got to be wondering the same thing I asked you when you first told me this. Why don't you and can you come home?
Okay, yes. So everyone in my family was telling me when this first popped out, everyone was telling me, come back home. I'm from Texas. My parents are in Dallas. Are in Texas. Everybody, come home. What are you doing? I could. I still could.
Can you though?
Kind
Can you
of.
really get on the plane and leave?
Well, yes. If I could go to the airport tonight and get on the flight and leave, but I could not get back in. So that's like the catch. Like I can't come back into the country. So once I leave, and my home is here, my job is here, this is my life now here in China. So I'm glad I stayed. I made the right decision. But yeah, if I leave, it's a one-way ticket, basically. I can't come back into China right now.
And that's, I think, what people don't understand. You've built a life there now. You've been there it's been 3 years already?
Less than, almost 3 years. Yeah, and I've been here dealing with this pandemic since the beginning, yeah.
Okay, I have another question coming in from one of your Dallas peeps. Dominant7. Is it in the air or just through physical contact? I think that's honestly been a question a lot of us here in New Yorkers as we're making masks. Betsy, can you hear me?
I didn't. I missed part of the question. Something about being in the air, and I want to answer it accurately.
You got.
I was going to try to answer it, and I'm like, I have no idea what she asked. Something about being in the air. So let's try that again.
You can't hear me because of that little connection. Is COVID-19 coronavirus? Is it something that is in the air, or is it just in physical contact?
No. So well, to be clear, we also are learning a lot about this virus. Okay. So I have to put that disclaimer out there first off. But it is something that hangs in the air. Research now shows it looks like it hangs in the air a lot longer than we thought possible, possibly hours now, so that if someone, and it's usually by water droplets, so if somebody sneezes or coughs and they're infected, it looks like it hangs in the air for a lot longer than we realized. Also, it's on surfaces, and it looks like it lives on surfaces for a longer time than we realize as well. So, yes, it is. It is in the air. It is contagious by contact. But it seems like, if I understand the research correctly, it seems like, it's really intimate contact where you're most at risk of spreading the virus, which is why the social distancing is so important. And it's by touching contaminated surfaces, which is why the hand washing is so important. So, those two things are lifesavers. If you got those two things down, that's the most important thing to do. Social distancing and hand washing.
That actually was a really good way to put it. They are actually lifesavers. JRich19, the homie, had another good question. Is there concern or reporting in China about COVID-19 sparking or returning in the fall or winter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yes. So that is a real concern that the virus might come back again later this year. Another concern in China right now is that we might see a second wave of infections from people who are flying into China sick from other countries, or people who are walking around asymptomatic, who are infected but don't know it. In fact, right now, the biggest concern with China is these imported cases, because flights are still arriving in China. There's not a lot, but you can still fly into China. Right now, most of the new cases in China are from people coming into the country who are sick. So that is something I think we're going to see in the United States as well. Like, FYI, folks, like, pay attention here. Even once the virus is under control in your city or town, The fear, I imagine, because we're seeing this here, the fear is that the virus might be introduced again, whether that is from a traveler or because we see a resurgence of cases in the winter.
Okay, but Betsy, to exactly that point, I feel like you did a funky two-step around my question. And when I was asking you about the almost backlash against people who are coming into China, you know, are for example, restaurant, I mean, there seems to be some discretionary element about the way that foreign nationals and people who are coming into the country are treated or things that they're allowed to.
We talk about the discrimination against Asian Americans in the United States, and definitely you see the reverse of that in China. Yeah, that does happen on occasion where, you know, Chinese. So, right. So where people in China are concerned that, you know, foreigners are infected and that foreigners might be walking around with the virus. Part of that is also because foreigners are less likely or to wear the face mask or more reluctant to wear the face mask. And a lot of people in Asia really swear by these face masks and wear them all the time. It's something, so anyway, so there has been reports of discrimination against foreign nationals in China, of businesses maybe not serving foreigners because they're worried they're infected, or hotels not serving foreigners because they worry they're infected. So yes, that is a concern, and that is a reality here. Yeah.
I have another question for you. So if you fly into China, is this self-isolation for 14 days that is required?
Yes. So right now only Chinese people can fly into China. Okay, Chinese nationals, Chinese passport holders. Once they land at the airport, they walk off the plane and they are immediately put onto a bus. The bus takes them to a center where they are processed, the temperature, they're tested. Yeah, I mean, this is today. I mean, and again, the virus is largely under control here in China, folks. Like, that's why I'm screaming about these restrictions, because this is not an easy solution. This takes a long time. So they land, the plane lands, they are taken off the plane, put on a bus, taken to basically a processing center where they fill out all the paperwork, they do the passport control stuff, but they also test them for COVID-19. They do the test. And then they are bused to a government hotel, where they are put into, run by the government, chosen by the government, okay, where they are put in that hotel for 14 days. It is absolutely enforced. The passenger, the traveler has to pay, by the way, has to pay for the hotel, has to pay for the rooms. They don't get a choice in the hotel, and they're not allowed to leave the room. They cannot leave the room. It is absolutely enforced, pretty strictly. The food is brought to them 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they sit in that hotel room for 14 days. That is.
To pay for that? Did the person?
Yeah, they have.
You have to pay for that room.
Yes, the traveler pays for this. Yes, absolutely, and it costs. The costs vary, but it costs. It costs, sometimes it can cost up to $150 a night, a day. Yeah, so it's a little bit of an effort. China is trying to discourage people from coming to China, which is why the travel restrictions, which is why foreigners are no longer allowed. But if you still are able to get here, if you hold a Chinese passport, that is what you face. I have friends right now who are currently in that quarantine hotel, these quarantine centers.
I have one just super brief question. Are those rooms sanitized already?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, they're sanitized, and I mean, the people that are even delivering the food, are in the full hazmat gears, I mean, yeah, they're absolutely sanitized. The trays, everything is sanitized. Yeah, no, China does not mess around with this. I cannot explain basically how seriously they're taking this.
Instagram page, you guys should see it. J.E.
Yeah.
Instagram stories are a lituation. They're so good. But Betsy, before, I know it's late, so I won't keep you, but 2 quick questions. One, someone asked a really good, oh man, there's another good question though. Do y'all have a curfew in China?
No, there is no curfew in Beijing. The rules differ per city, but I don't think there's any, except for maybe Wuhan. I don't think there's any city in China with a curfew. No.
Okay, one more good question.
Now,
Oh, sorry.
but also quick disclaimer, a lot of places are closed early. Like there's not a lot of bars that are open late in Beijing right now. So even if you can go out at night, there's not much to do.
Another question here. Have you been tested?
I have not. I have not been tested.
The number of times they've come to check your temperature and kept you in your room, no one's actually tested you.
No one's actually, it's a good question. No one has actually tested me. I think it's because there was frankly no reason to. I was never sick. I never showed any symptoms. When I did leave Beijing briefly in February. When I came back, I came in through a window where the restrictions were not as severe as they are now. I mean, if I arrived in Beijing today, I would absolutely be tested. For sure, I would be tested. But I've never actually been tested, no.
Okay, I hate to I swear I really will let you go to sleep. I think there was like a couple good, I mean, the questions are really good, guys. I'm sorry. No. We're both journalists. We appreciate the value of a good question. Rapid fire, let's do like a blitz round. Also for anyone watching, someone just reminded me to tell them your name. This is Jonathan Betz. I think your Instagram is J.E. Betz, right? J.E. Betz.
Mm-hmm. J.E.B.E.T.Z. Yep.
Yeah, B.E.T.Z. He is an incredible journalist who has reported literally all over the world for local
and
stations.
A friend. And I'm a friend of yours, Morgan. We go way back.
Full disclosure, this is my Instagram account. Jonathan is my best friend in the whole universe. This is the man who is actually going to MC my wedding, which, R.I.P.
Are we going to talk about that? I mean, let's talk about like the personal disruptions. I think we should. Like, I mean, because you're facing kind of what I think a lot of people around the world are facing right now, which is I have something big coming up. I'm trying to make a plan, whether that's, a trip or a baby shower or a party or something. For you, it's a wedding next month. And that's the breaking news. I mean, no, we were trying to do it so quietly. I didn't even really tell anyone. But yeah, I mean, I'm like heartbroken. It's obviously super hard when I am reporting on the front lines. I was in Detroit last week. I was in New Rochelle before that. And you're hearing these stories, and I'm going to Philly tomorrow to report, and you are hearing these stories, and they're hard, right? Like it's hard to just watch that kind of toll around you. And then to come home and it's like my own personal life is super disrupted, right? I wanted to quietly go get married with, my closest friends and family. And that just cannot happen now. That cannot responsibly happen now. And so, yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's sad. I've been super sad about it. Like, it sucks. There's no two ways around it. And I think that's the thing that none of us anticipated. I don't think we anticipated quite the magnitude of the toll and just how long it was going to be. Like, even trying to postpone a wedding, like, when do I postpone it to? We have no idea. That even when we talk about flattening the curve, like, what about the tail end of that curve, And, like, this is what I keep saying to everyone I know, is that I learned this, and this was a lesson I had to learn, folks. You have got to stop asking, when will this end? You've got to stop, because the question is going to drive you crazy. I have been asking that question since January. And it is still not over here, folks. Yeah. And the reality is not a soul on this planet knows when this is going to end. So you might as well just let go. What's the expression? Let go and let God. And just focus on one day at a time. Focus one day at a time. Like, and just let everything just kind of sit. You can't plan right now. It's just impossible.
Honey,
there are no answers.
On national television, you were cleaning your light bulbs, child, because you were so bored.
Yeah.
I knew.
Yeah. I'm telling you, like, y'all, this is stressful. I mean, like, listen, like, I got a lot to say about this. Yeah. Like, I mean, listen, y'all, like, this is.
Listen, I know I'm going to let you go, but I just want to ask one quick question. Someone was saying, how widespread is testing of the general population there? Can anyone be tested who wants to be tested?
I think the answer to that is yes. If anyone is showing symptoms, in China. They've got a whole list of places that you are supposed to go to first. And once you go there, I'm pretty sure they're going to give a test to you because, like I said, the travelers, anybody who comes into Beijing, whether that's by train, plane, or car, is tested. So yeah, the testing is not necessarily an issue here.
And Brownmont Photography asks, did China have mass funerals for those who passed from the virus?
No mass funerals. In fact, in Wuhan, which is where most of the deaths are, China lost about 3,000 people to this virus. Most of them were in the city of Wuhan. Families are, I think, just now beginning to go and collect remains and begin the funeral processes there. But no mass funerals or anything like that.
We got a very important question from one DA Will 333 who wants to know, once weddings are postponed, how much do you charge for your wedding jobs? They're just looking for you to come and handle.
How much am I charging? Let me see. Yeah, how much should I charge for that gig? I'm not cheap, folks.
I think we all needed this. I'm so glad that I was able to share some of your wisdom and expertise with the world, and I love you with all my heart and everything in it.
Oh, love you too, Morgan. It'll get better, folks, I promise. It's just a long road. It's a long, slow journey.
Thanks for walking it with us, B. Bye.
Sure, no problem. Bye.